Hello, my name is Jelena Mrdal, and I work at the University of Bergen, Norway. My background is in biological psychology, and I work on topics related to stress, sleep, and circadian rhythms. One course that I teach at the University of Bergen is called Behavior, Health, and Nutrition. It is a basic course which covers different topics within both neuroscience, mental health, and health psychology. I teach topics related to nutrition and brain function, as well as relationship between sleep, circadian rhythms, and nutrition. And I was invited to this conference to give you a very short summary of these topics. So let's first start by looking at what functions the brain has and how the nutrients are used in the brain. Our nervous system consists of the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, shown here in yellow in this picture. And we have the peripheral nervous system, which are all the nerves connecting the rest of the body with the central nervous system. The brain is our center of cognition and intelligence. It is important for emotional regulation, for learning, for memory, as well as for motor skills. The brain acts as a control tower, and it is in close communication with the sensory system, the hormonal system, and the immune system. The brain gets important information through sensory organs, for example, about temperature, the taste, or the smell. And it also gets information through our hormones and immune system about what happens in the rest of the body. And so the brain really depends on this communication so that it can control and coordinate different physiological processes, such as regulate body temperature, heart rate, sleep, and so on. And most of these processes occur unconsciously. However, the brain also controls and can adjust our movement and our behavior according to the needs of the body. Put simply, for example, if we feel hunger, this is because the brain has gathered information from the stomach, from intestines, and from the blood that we need more energy or that we are lacking a specific nutrient. Then our behavior is changed so that we seek food or we prepare a meal. But our eating behavior is also influenced by many other factors, such as social and cultural factors, and also which habits we have developed. But everything happens and is processed in the brain. The taste, the smell of the food, desire or aversion for food, and also habits or bad habits that we may develop. Our brain needs a lot of energy. The human brain consists of 100 billion neurons, and each neuron can connect to up to 10,000 other neurons, which is an enormous amount of connections together. If you take that many grains of sand as there are these connections, then they would fit into a cube as big as a football field. And neurons are communicating with each other using neurotransmitters, which are so-called neuronal messengers. And in addition to neurons, we have other support cells in the brain, the so-called glia cells. And these cells are very important for metabolism and regeneration, and they support neurons in communication with each other. So knowing that the brain has so many cells makes it easier to understand that the brain needs a lot of energy, because each neuron uses energy to be able to process information and to be able to communicate. The brain is actually only 2% of our body weight, but it uses 20% of the daily energy in the body. So we could say that the brain is very greedy. But the brain doesn't have ability to store energy such as other tissues. And energy stored in the brain lasts very shortly, so it needs a continuous supply of both oxygen and nutrients from the blood, particularly glucose. So how are the different nutrients used in the brain? First, let's look at so-called macronutrients, the carbohydrates, fat, and protein, which our body needs in large amount. Glucose, a carbohydrate, is a main fuel for physiological functions, and we already mentioned glucose. The brain uses energy from the glucose for different chemical reactions, such as making of neurotransmitters, and it needs energy for the neurons to be able to communicate. When part of the brain needs more energy, then more blood runs to that part to deliver both oxygen and glucose. As we mentioned, the brain uses a lot of energy, but it cannot store much. So it needs constant supply of the energy, and that is the main reason that we need to have a constant amount of glucose in our blood, which means that we need constant blood sugar level. If the blood sugar level drops, this can affect the brain function. We can experience tiredness, confusion, memory problems, foggy vision, and so on. And with serious drop in blood sugar level, this can even lead to loss of consciousness. The next macronutrient that we will talk about is fat, which is also used by the brain. And actually, fatty acids, which come from the fat, are the main component of all the cell membranes. And also, fatty acids help make a conductive layer around the nerves so that the nerve signal can travel faster. Next, amino acids that we get from eating protein are not only used to build our muscles, but are also important in the brain. In the brain, amino acids are used to make different parts of the cell machinery, and they are used to make neurotransmitters. For example, amino acid tryptophan is a precursor of neurotransmitter serotonin. And we also have so-called micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, which are only required in our body in small amounts, but they are very important cofactors in different chemical reactions in different cells in the body. And in the brain, they are, among other functions, involved in the making of neurotransmitters. Examples such as vitamin B3, vitamin B9, and minerals iodine and iron are all essential for normal neuronal growth and brain development. So like the rest of our body, the brain needs all the different nutrients, and therefore it is important to have varied and nutrient-dense diet. And this is especially important early in life, since nutrients are essential building blocks for brain development. Many studies have investigated the relationship between diet and brain function, and here are some examples. For example, it has been shown that children who eat breakfast compared to those who skip breakfast perform better on tasks requiring attention, executive function, and memory. And these effects are stronger in children who are initially poorly nourished. It has been shown that poor diet, such as lack of protein or severe vitamin deficiency or high-fat diet, can affect brain function. Studies that have investigated this find that poor diet is associated with changes in memory function, confusion, and irritability. And poor diet early in life can have long-term consequences on the developing brain. Another example is studies which have investigated if adding dietary supplements during development can influence brain function. And the effects are mostly observed in countries where there is malnutrition. Here, adding additional vitamins and minerals to the diet can improve children's academic performance, but there are no major effects in normally nourished children. And these are just some examples on how nutrition is associated with brain function. And again, the emphasis is on importance of varied and nutrient-dense diet early in life. Now we can move to the second topic and talk about what is the relationship between sleep and circadian rhythms with nutrition. First, let's look at what are circadian rhythms. All cells in our body have a timekeeping system, so-called clock genes, which produce the circadian rhythms. And inside our brain, there is a structure that serves as a master biological clock. It gets a signal from daylight through our eyes, and it synchronizes all other clocks in the body. The biological clock makes almost all physiological functions in our body to follow a daily rhythm so that they are optimized for a specific time of day. The rhythm in sleep and wakefulness is the most obvious circadian rhythm. We humans are a species that is active during the day and we sleep during the night. But we can see in examples here in the slide that there is a circadian rhythm in different physiological functions. For example, our body temperature, which is higher during the day when we are awake and active, and lower during the night. Other physiological functions are also optimized so that we can be awake and alert during the day, and we can find food and digest food, while during the night when we sleep, many of our organs, including digestive organs, can have a period of rest and be regenerated. There is increasing knowledge about the link between circadian rhythms, energy balance, and metabolism. And timing of food intake can affect our metabolism. If humans are eating at the wrong time of day, which is during the night, this can affect the circadian rhythm in our digestive organs. They are no longer synchronized with the master clock in the brain, and this can contribute to weight gain and obesity. Shift workers are an example of this. In general, they show an increased risk for both obesity as well as diabetes. The relationship between circadian rhythm and metabolism has been nicely illustrated also in an experiment with mice who got to eat a high-fat food. Mice are normally night-active animals. And if they ate the high-fat food during the night, or dark fat, illustrated here with the black line in the figure, then they showed normal increase of body temperature, of body weight during the period of 6 weeks. But if they ate the high-fat food only during daytime, which is when they normally should be resting, their body weight got much higher, which is illustrated here with the dotted line. And in this graph here, you can see that the mice from both groups were equally active and ate the same amount of food. So the only difference here was that they ate at different time of day. And this means that the timing of food intake is important because our digestive organs are optimized to digest food when we normally are active and awake. If we eat food when we should be resting, it can have consequences on our metabolism and cause weight gain. So every day, our body needs a period of sleep. But why do we have to sleep? Everyone can experience that if they do not sleep, they get irritated, unfocused, and of course, very sleepy. A lack of sleep affects our mood, and we cannot concentrate and perform as well as we are when we are rested. And sleep function has been studied intensively over the past decades, and studies have shown that sleep is involved in many different processes. As we close our eyes and fall asleep, there is a reduction with reduced contact with our surroundings, but the brain continues to process information, and sleep allows the brain to form complex memories, and it strengthens other cognitive functions as well as emotional regulation. But we also have evidence that sleep is not only important for the brain, but also for the rest of the body. It actually supports our immune system in fight against infections, and it supports our metabolic function and energy balance. During sleep, our cells make different molecules, and there is a removal of metabolic waste from cells during sleep. Our need for sleep changes across the lifespan. Newborns need many more hours of sleep than adult individuals, and this very much also reflects the brain development. The American Sleep Association made recommendations on how many hours of sleep we should have at different age groups, which they summarized in this graph. Blue is recommended hours of sleep, yellow is accepted number of hours, and everything below is not recommended. And these recommendations are based on knowledge from different studies that have investigated the consequences of sleep deprivation on our health. There is, though, a great individual variation in how much sleep we need. On average, an adult individual needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, but not everyone. The rule is, in general, that if you feel rested and you function well during the day, you probably slept enough. What is, however, an increasing problem in the modern society is that we sleep less than we need. And different sleep thieves can be the cause for this. For example, when traveling across time zones and experiencing jet lag, or working during the time of day when we normally should be resting, such as during night work. Or it can be sleep disorders and other medical conditions that disturb our sleep. But the most frequent reason that we do not get enough sleep is that we simply go to bed too late. We want to stay awake as much as possible and engage in different activities such as watching TV, using computer and different mobile devices, what we can collectively call electronic sleep thieves. And there are many studies showing that sleep or the sleeping less can have negative consequences on our health. This is from a study in adolescents where it was found that how many hours of sleep they get is associated with the body mass index. And those with either low body weight or with obesity were the ones reporting very little sleep, and this was particularly true for the girls. So, but how can sleep be connected with our body weight? There is some evidence from experimental studies. In one study of sleep restriction, when participants were allowed only 4 hours of sleep for 2 days. This affected their appetite regulation. There was more appetite stimulating hormone in the blood, and they reported more appetite and more hunger, which is illustrated here with the red color, compared to appetite and hunger after normal night of sleep, which is illustrated with the blue color. Other experimental studies have shown that when we are sleep deprived, we choose food with more calories, and our brain sees food as more rewarding than when we are rested. Other big population studies have found associations between sleep duration and our eating habits. Some studies suggest that short sleepers may eat higher fat and lower protein diets, or that short sleepers have increased total energy intake and total calories. Other studies have found that short sleep is associated with eating less fruit and vegetables, eating less fiber, less whole grains and beans, and that short sleepers may replace their meals with snack also in the evening and night. And normal sleep duration has been associated with most food variety. So having varied and nutrient-dense diet is important for health, especially during development. But having enough sleep and keeping a stable rhythm is also important for our metabolism and health. And this is, of course, important knowledge for both parents, teachers, and health practitioners, as well as policy makers.